Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. We're here on Monday evening. We're watching some pretty spectacular satellite imagery just off of the Baja of California, and this is Tropical Storm Frank. Now, it's Tropical Storm Frank, as it moves farther to the north, is kind of running over top of this. It's just one of the most gorgeous cloud fields on Earth. It's this broken up between open and closed cell stratocumulus cloud deck that always sits off of the coast of California. And Frank is going to move up toward that and slowly weaken. But there's been some interesting forecasts of Frank where some of the moisture is trying to turn its way back into California. While I don't think that's going to happen, it's still quite impressive just to see what this looks like on satellite today. Coming back over parts of the southwest, this has been another area that's been just spectacular to watch. As I kind of run back and forth over today, I want you to notice a couple of things. Can you see how the circulation right here is kind of orbiting right around a high that's sitting on the four corners? Watch as I go back and forth here. Here's this morning, throughout the day today. You see that just running around here. There's also an upper level low that's spinning in this area, and believe it or not, this upper level low is going to get absorbed into the flow and could possibly by Wednesday help initiate storms over parts of the Midwest. So we're keeping a very close eye on the southwest monsoon. But I start in the southwest just to make the point that the southwestern monsoon this year has outperformed most of the last decade in terms of total accumulated precipitation. And the displays we've seen here of some of the heavy rain, including a lot of the lightning as of late, has just been incredible. I know that over the weekend we watched today there was nearly 1 million lightning strikes recorded just from the storms coming out of the southwest and the storms running here across the rest of the United States. So just impressive to say the least. But our bigger story comes down to the flow, right? So let's talk about this. We've now seen the rebuilding of a ridge that's here between Hawaii and Alaska that's sitting right on top of that very warm water we've been discussing. So the flow's coming over the top. This is getting us set up with an active Canadian storm track. So see the lows right in through here. What are they doing? They're kind of orbiting the general pattern, which has been favoring more troughs of low pressure around, around the Hudson Bay. The sweeping trade winds here, which really accelerate across parts of the Caribbean, that's quite common, are making the turn, pushing quite a bit of moisture into each of these, which means we're not shutting down the Gulf of Mexico, despite the size of this subtropical ridge that's sitting through this area. This is just an elongated region of high pressure. So what we're really going to be dealing with here is, where do the triggers come through to initiate the storms, to deliver the rain to the places that really need it? I'll comment more in a few moments about what's going on in the tropics, why the Atlantic has been so quiet. But one of the big problems we're going to be seeing tonight, here on Monday, and then getting into Tuesday, is we have very strong winds coming out of the Columbia Basin. They're coming through parts of Montana. And this area appears relatively dry, and it's been very hot. We've been breaking records in the Pacific Northwest in terms of the duration of such high heat. Okay, we'll talk about that again in a second. And we're just going to see how this all kind of comes through as these lows keep rolling through the Canadian prairie. So what we've missed in this new, not what we missed, excuse me, what has changed in this new pattern is right here. That's the biggest change. We no longer have the big ridge of high pressure there. So our all hazards weather map, okay, this is all flood in through here. This is all new heat advisory issued today. Severe thunderstorm watch in this area, still dealing with the flooding in parts of Kentucky and West Virginia. But in the Northwest, this is excessive heat warning. Probably the last day or so we're going to see it into this area. But the red flag warnings that are out here continue to show us of our increased fire threat. Now, using the high-res rapid refresh model, we're just kind of forecasting out over the next 2 days where we expect that smoke to go from the northwest. And just want to make a point here that it's not until August 1st that I've shown you forecasts of smoke. We've had a very, very good fire season in the West this year. Just comparing that to historical averages. Of course, there's been terrible fires in the West, but nothing compared to the historical numbers. And what we see here is that smoke will continue to spread throughout the plains, getting into the Midwest and eventually to the East Coast over the coming days. I just want to make sure I'm clear. I'm not downplaying the fires that we've had so far this year, just simply looking at them compared to past years. Now, what's helping this out is that over the last 10 days or so, let's see if this populated. There we go. We've seen, or more than 10 days, this is 12 days. We have many places throughout the West that have now, for the end of July, had the hottest such July 20th through July 31st time period when you look at average temperatures. And that was the effect of pushing that ridge. So the flow came around and then really dove here. So the month of July finished cooler in a broad section here of the mid part of the United States. It has not stopped with the heat down in Texas. And throughout much of California, we've really maintained a very warm bias despite steering away from the excessive heat, the long duration, like the 30-plus day excessive heat in California. We've lately brought in some really warm conditions there. But what I want you to know is this. That was the ridge, all right, that set up at the end of July that drove that trough that set up right in through this area. With this gone, how does the pattern transition? And just like we asked last week, how long does the new pattern transition last? Because with that shift, that's what brought that slow-moving front that came through. When you look back over the last 7 days, we see the delivery of the incredibly heavy rainfall that went through parts of St. Louis, which has been identified by the National Weather Service as a 1,000-year flood event. And then what we have over here in this part of eastern Kentucky, which again, based off of the tables, the rainfall frequency tables, given that there was a foot of rain that fell here in 2 days, that would classify this as even greater than a 1,000-year flood event, possibly a 10,000-year event. Again, that's just the statistical probability of having a flood of that magnitude in any given year. But what I saw in this was as that front sagged, we delivered rain to places that desperately needed it. I'm talking about the Mid-South. I'm talking about the Panhandle of Texas. But this monsoon has just been absolutely incredible. Now, again, this was through midnight today on Monday. So we've had a storm complex that rolled through here today, delivering a little bit more rainfall. We'll show you that in just a few seconds. But this is what the old pattern, this one here, got us. So what we're watching for is what this means kind of going forward, because the pattern's gone. We're going to shift it. Does that mean drought redevelopment here, where we've seen it? What about the pockets that have missed out on some of the heavier rain in the Cornbelt, or in parts of New England, where models had kind of overpromised precipitation? And if another front sags through, what does that do in terms of the risk of redeveloping flooding rains in places like this? Something to point out here on this map, which again shows the last 30 days of precipitation as a percent of normal. We have very poor radar coverage right around the Four Corners states, right here at the Four Corners, and that's why you see some odd effects in there when we combine the rain gauge with radar data. I just want to explain that to you. So from here, this is the shift we discussed last week. This is the 12Z GFS. I'm going to show you both GFS and European heights today. As we play through Tuesday into Wednesday and Thursday this week, I'll just rock back and forth. You can see multiple short waves that just round the base of this broader trough, like this one on Wednesday that's going to really light up an area here in the Midwest and upper Midwest for storms. But as I play out there toward the end of the week, going into Saturday and Sunday, what we end up getting here is a broader ridge that becomes established in the midsection of the country. We don't have it here. There's still the deep trough that's coming out of, the Bering Sea, the Chukchi Sea, and Alaska that's sweeping into this direction. That's what kicks off the waves that go across the Canadian prairie. But the flow down here is going to be something like this. What's not in this pattern? There's no blocking high over the southeast. There's no blocking high over the west. It seems to be tucked away in the middle part of the country. And playing here past the first week of August into the second week, this would be Wednesday the 10th and beyond, we continue to see this triple ridge setup. So there's a ridge here, there's a ridge there, and there's another here, with the troughs kind of tucked in between. And that's been a pattern we've been on the lookout for the entire summer. That's a very La Niña look at things. So what does this mean? Well, when we take the next 15 days and look forward, the European model says, keep the southwest monsoon going. Park the ridge somewhere in this vicinity. That gives us an active Canadian storm track. And if the ridge sits here and the flow comes over the top, we end up getting those ridge riding storms in this area. Now, there's quite a bit of tropical moisture coming in here. The influence of the subtropical high, though, sits right there, and there's questions as to how much rain does eventually get here along the coasts of Georgia, North and South Carolina. But this will be the corridor of active thunderstorms. And one of the most important questions is, do we build isolated storm complexes in the midsection of the country here where they're desperately going to need more rain? And does anything come out of the tropics to relieve this? So this gets us out there to the 16th of August. One thing to point out, the 12Z Gfs Ensemble looks like this. So this is the European, and this is the GFS. And you see some similarities, but I think the most striking difference is actually happening right in through here. The GFS is really not seeing the evolution of those ridge riding storms coming over the top that typically happen with this. So I just want to make a point to kind of stress those two differences. Let's look longer range first, then I'll come back to some of these details. We still have the same setup across the Pacific Ocean. The warmest water is between Hawaii and Alaska. It's not up against the coast. The important point there is that if it was along the coast, we'd get split jet stream flow. That'd be a common occurrence with this. So what happens is the flow is going to go over the top and kind of bump out 3 times. There's the first one here, the second one there, and the third one will be here, helping to persist, or allowing the atmosphere to persist with that ridge in the midsection of the country. These trade winds are still, they're absolutely screaming for this time of year. It's been the longest duration summer trade wind event, of course it's associated with La Niña, that I've kind of seen in my professional career. And it's really got a grip on this pattern, and look, it's just not letting go. Those stronger trade winds, which again, if you just look at this Hofmuller diagram, this is today through the next 15 days, just says keep them going. Keep some westerly winds coming out of the out of the Indian Ocean. With this being the most dominant signal, okay, that's why I keep stressing that triple ridge pattern, because the MJO is not moving in its normal cycles. It seems to be stuck more in null space, which means we're not getting a strong moving wave on top of the other tropical signals. Okay, so that means La Niña still dominates, and that's why the long-range forecasts continue to advertise this. This would be mid-August, August 15 through September 15. So we still have that southwest monsoon. We see that if there's risk of going over drier, it's in the western Cornbelt. Now this model cannot pick up on tropical systems, can't develop them out a month in advance. So what it sees is the flow coming over the top like this, with another ridge sitting here, bringing its moisture around like that. And then that effect is to deliver more rainfall into this corridor, the eastern Cornbelt, Tennessee Valley, Ohio Valley, southeast, with cascading storms that come over the top on an active Canadian storm track, which again is not really well represented. So that is that's the outlook, and the European models hung on to that. Now here's my question. The models will struggle with thunderstorm development. How much rain and how frequent are the fronts going to be through this part of the western Cornbelt? I've told you they've underestimated the rain here. I want to know if they're going to underestimate it there. That's 2 big questions. And then the tropical system one we'll get into in just a few seconds. But I'd like to make the point that, now this looks out a little bit farther than what I'm about to show you, but the CPC new guidance that we got released last Friday suggests a very similar outlook in terms of the precipitation pattern for August. So if you notice, if we kind of painted it, this is kind of like the dry corridor, and that's where this, whoops, sorry about that. I accidentally hovered over the wrong thing. There we go. That's what the CPC has got too. Can you kind of see that similar triangle? They're wetter in the mid-Atlantic, active southwest monsoon, and they're anchoring the greatest heat still down here in Texas and the parts of the mid-south. Now we would expect drought redevelopment here if we go back to losing that deep trough that sits over the Hudson Bay. That's the one that delivers the slow-moving fronts that come down like they did last week and bring the rain here. So this is very consistent with the way the pattern is going. What I'm going to be in the lookout for in this entire thing will be a southeastern ridge. We haven't seen it all year, but if a ridge moves into the southeast, which is a possibility in late summer, that would be critical because the flow around the ridge does something like this to start to increase the tropical moisture that comes into Texas all the way through the mid-south, curls back around on this side. That would completely eliminate our drought concerns in this area, the southeast ridge. Where the drought, would develop would be right in through here. It's a trade-off. Another part of this, imagine that that Hudson low does actually redevelop and deepens. This would increase storm chances for a broad section here of the country right in through that area. And we need to watch the Pacific behavior. Should we lose the deeper trough that's over Alaska right now or being forecast, and that flattens out? Well, that could bring the heat back into the west again, which would change the temperature and precipitation pattern across the country. I guess what I'm saying here is that there are several failure points in this forecast, and one of the big ones is going to be what comes out of the tropics. Now, I do need to point this out, though. They also released a new monthly drought outlook for August, and given the rains that they saw over the weekend, that's why they called for some of the improvement in this area. But there could be drought redevelopment here because of their newest outlook. They also had some drought development here and also in New England where there had been forecasts for better precipitation, myself included. I had forecast better precipitation for New England. Instead, we're seeing some drier conditions here. So we need to keep all of this kind of tucked away in the back of our minds moving forward. So in the near term, again, we just come back to our all hazards weather map, and it's the heat returning to the midsection of the country we got to spend some time talking about and what's going on throughout the West in terms of the transition here. So severe storms, the risk today has primarily been focused here in the Ohio River Valley and back into parts of Kansas. And then we're going to watch tomorrow here in the upper Midwest. And this is a part of a front that's sliding through here by Wednesday. And I want to show you where the embedded circulation in that front on Wednesday is coming from. I think this is fascinating. So if you watch right here, okay, there's a short wave that's tucked away in the monsoon. So remember I showed you there was flow coming around like this here? Well, there is a short wave which curls around the other direction. That's right through this point. And what's going to happen with that short wave, you got your eye on it here? It's going to get pulled into the flow, there it is, coming through Wyoming by Tuesday afternoon. And then by Wednesday, there's a larger wave here with the energy from that short wave. I shouldn't call it energy. This is really just vorticity induced by wind shear that comes here. And the two things are going to try to come into phase and initiate a line of storms in this area. Now, how far to the west those storms make it is critical because this is an area that needs a lot of rain. We've seen the dry soil moisture in here. We've seen that recently some storms have missed here. Does that front swipe through and deliver the precipitation? I'm going to use the high-res 18Z NAM to kind of get a look at this. So this is starting this evening. And what we see is by Monday evening, this is where we're watching for those storms to redevelop. They're already redeveloping in this part of southern Illinois. Take a look here. It's kind of connected to this low that's way up in Quebec. And then notice over here, I want you to watch. This is kind of fun. Ready? You're going to see one circulation like this and another one like that. Okay, here we go. See that? I'll rock back and forth. That's the wave that's going to move out of Nevada into the Snake River Valley. And by the time we get into Tuesday afternoon, it's creating storms over this part of Wyoming. The low is moving out of Saskatchewan over into Manitoba. They're going to link up right here and on Tuesday night start sweeping through, increasing the storm threat. Now this is through the overnight hours getting into Wednesday. Now right in through this area we're going to have to just nowcast, which means we watch the radar on Tuesday night to Wednesday morning and then throughout the day on Tuesday to see if the rains do fill in this area better than what the models suggest. But it could mean more storms that roll through Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, the eastern Cornbelt, multiple rounds of it, including, as you note here, possibly some more heavy rain in and around St. Louis, an area that just outside of St. Louis, some folks picked up 14 inches of rain with the system last week. So I'm spending a lot of time on the near-term forecast, but that I got to watch out for this given the position and strength of that front. From there, though, let's get a general sense of this pattern. Sorry, I was a little bit ahead of you getting prepared today. So GFS is on the left, Europeans on the right. Love this multi-model analysis. As we play through Tuesday into Wednesday, let's just see where the models put that front by 7 p.m. Wednesday. They got it in the same spot. Model performance right now is about even. So again, what you're going to watch with me, Canadian storm track, plenty of moisture out of the southeast, nothing blocking that, and these fronts that swipe through. So here's the first one on Wednesday evening. Now that front's going to have a hard time pushing against the broader subtropical ridge that's here. All right. So as we get toward the end of the week, this is Thursday, now getting into Friday and getting into Saturday. Did you see that? I'll just go back over those 3 days. Here's Thursday. Just watch right in through here with me. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. You see how it all just stuck around there? That's because the flow's coming around like this and the front gets stalled. Meanwhile, another low made its way right here into the Hudson Bay, and it's got a front. This is the Saturday front that a lot of us have been discussing. And it sweeps through, and we have the same questions. How far to the west does it deliver that rain? The ensembles are not going to pick up on it. There's going to be a lot of spread. It's going to be a thunderstorm event, which means it's not going to be well forecast. But the high that's coming in behind it is pushing hard. And I think it's going to develop better storms down that line to fill in some of those gaps we talked about at the beginning. As we play this on out to next Sunday and Monday, look, another low rolls through the Canadian prairie. So we're just going to watch that one do the same thing, drag a front through this area. The ensembles want to keep this whole region dry, but I don't think it's going to be as dry as they suggest. I think there's going to be more storm complexes rolling through the western Corn Belt based on some of the new data that we've got today. Now, from here, I want to just show you the model output just so we have it. This is the next 7 days from the European, and here's the GFS, the European and the GFS. So you can see the storm complexes that are trying to be produced back here in the western Corn Belt. Seems to be a pretty hard divide right here, and then tucked away under that ridge, this part of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. Good thing they got a lot of rain here at the end of last week because we need to buy some time here with this drier week coming up. So again, European GFS, and then here's the model differences. So when you compare the two, do note that these colors represent European wetter. These are GFS wetter. So the GFS is way wetter in the southeast, but that's about the only place. All right, just something to take note of there. Told you there's not a whole lot going on in the tropics right now. Nothing for the next 5 days on the National Hurricane Center's site. We look out there, we just don't see any low pressure tracks being picked up by the models. So all the action's over here in the Pacific. And we can blame that a lot on some of the big dust plumes that are coming off the Sahara. We continue to watch those. So we're going to have to just keep watching this for when the tropical system season will get going here in August. But we got to get rid of some of this dust before that happens. In the meantime, though, this is where the ridge will park by day 10, so see the flow? There's where our cascading storms are going to be. It'll just be a region in here that gets tucked away under this heat that is likely drier unless you get some of the moisture from the monsoon or the tail end of those fronts bringing in some storms. And the week 2 precipitation pattern just tries to highlight that area as being drier. So there's your monsoon. There's your storms running over the edge, so see them right in through here. And that's where we see the best precipitation chances getting out there into week 2. On the temperature side of it, this has been a really kind of important topic to be discussing. That heat's coming out of the northwest. This was today's high temperatures on Monday. Tuesday's going to be the all-out scorcher. By Wednesday morning, we will have overnight lows in this area that'll be in the 70s, possibly in the low 80s here in part of Iowa. High temperatures are going to be triple digit. So going from Tuesday into Wednesday, and then Thursday, there's that first front that swipes through, remember, that initiates the storms. Heat comes right in behind it. So this is now getting into Friday, next round. Notice the west is cool, but Friday, remember there's another front coming through on Saturday, so here it is. It's going to knock some of this heat out going into Sunday. So there's that next front coming through over the weekend. The west has lost its extreme heat risk. It's built back into the midsection of the country, and with that ridge opening up, we wonder how long that's going to last. So let's do our 5-day sliding window from the European model. Let's play this out here through the end of the first week of August and now getting out there from August 6th to the 11th. You can see the temperature pattern here, and let's just take it all the way out here from the 11th through the 16th. So it just is really setting up with the monsoon, the ridge, the flow coming over the top, and that's the way it sets up. I guess we'd have to pick the Mississippi River as possibly being our dividing point. Cooler, wetter east, hotter, drier west possibly, but keep an eye out in this area. Maybe I'll make it a little larger here for the potential for better storms that are just not well resolved in the models right now. I want to give you a very quick international update. We are keeping a close eye on South America. This is the latest root zone soil moisture map. Not a factor here. Don't look at it yet here. We're in the middle of the dry season. What I'm concerned about is down here. Argentina's seen some drought development. Very dry couple of months here, the last 2 months. There's better rains coming through right now, but they need a lot to undo the drought stresses we've seen in Argentina. I'm just going to put a number on here. We are 6 weeks away from planting, all right? And that would be the September 15th start date for Brazil. They're going to hit Mato Grosso right away at the beginning of that. Elsewhere, I do want to point out that Europe is in the midst of another heat wave, primarily in France, Germany, and the Iberian Peninsula, of course, where there's Spain. So we continue to see very hot temperatures here. And they've gone over drier as well, so isolated storm complexes. So we're going to continue to see stresses in parts of Europe. Take note, though, this part of eastern Ukraine is forecast to be quite wet in the models. It's on the downwind side of that big ridge that's moving over parts of Central Europe. So I'm going to stop there. I hope you all have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you again on Thursday morning. Appreciate it. Thank you.